once, and I was like, oh, it's still a bit expensive. I'm going back to Phantom. But I'm very freaking keen to have an opportunity to try the new network, or try the network out again, and learn more about your protocol and what you're aiming to bring to Avalanche. Because I think the Solidly model, obviously is proliferating like mad right now. It sort of seems like a rabbit, but it is clearly adding value to these networks, I think,
Yeah.
and I'm excited to share your vision with everyone. I think that the oath holders in here will really align with your ethos, so I want to talk a bit about that today. And yeah, how you plan to, I guess, differentiate, because you are not alone in this space. There is obviously going to be some competition, and so I think that's the main burning question that I want to get to as well at some point. But if it's all right, I'll throw it over to you just to give a brief recap and introduce yourself and maybe the Glacier platform and what made you pick Avalanche
Sure.
to start this journey.
Yeah. So, I've given this over many times. So it's almost like a rehearsal to me of telling my story in DeFi, but I love telling it because it kind of really introduces you to kind of where I differ from a lot of other protocol leaders. When I came into the space, I live here in Kentucky, and there was a chance where I was moving an hour away from my current home and my career path as an operations supervisor at a freight company. And I had about 2 months where I didn't pay mortgage. And in that 2 months, I told my fiance, I said, I know this sounds crazy, but I think I can do this. And she said, okay, go ahead and try it. And I thought I was going to be a trader. I am a horrible trader. So I quickly learned I was going to lose money there. And then I got really into the DeFi scene and learning about, communities and the effect it takes on people to kind of counteract FUD and engaging with users. And so, quite honestly, I got into like a really, really degen part of DeFi, which was tune forks. And I got into a 30-day tune fork. And if you don't know, that means the emissions only lasted 30 days as opposed to 365 days. The devs were completely anon, and there was 4 other moderators that did absolutely nothing. So I was there chatting 18 hours a day. I publicly doxed myself. I held weekly AMAs, and I kept the peg for about 22 out of the 30 days. So it was an absolutely insane thing to see. But what it really taught me was that I don't really need anybody else in my corner, and I also am very good at building communities, which is very important in DeFi right now. And so with that knowledge, those devs eventually gave up on the project. I took it over, renounced contracts. I moved over to a new tune fork to build up from the ground up, which my community, wanted. It was something they agreed upon. And that's really where I started building my following. We ran for a very solid amount of months. I would say about 95% of users that were in the current tune fork made money, Frozen Walrus. And, there's not a lot of hopefully, I think that there's not a lot of people that can really say that, but we ran really, really well for about 4 months before hyperinflation took hold. The market being kind of already shady with FTX and everything else that was going on. UST had just crashed. So all of these things accumulated, but still I built this community. I was doing AMAs, and I still do. And so I built this following through trust. We even had, I had about a $450,000 treasury. And we built a contract we called the Back to Peg campaign. It became insolvent, and so what I had to do was dissolve the entire treasury of all $450,000 to make everybody that invested in that whole, pretty much, right? To no cost to them. Every one of those investors, I think, were about 95% whole on their investment. Essentially, you could deposit straight USDC and then take it back out on a tax based on where the peg was. And so it didn't work as intended over the long term, and the peg kept falling. So I had to disband the entire treasury to kind of make them whole. So, and I always explain that story because that's kind of, I've always pushed being publicly doxxed and doing the right thing and having integrity in the space and putting your money where your mouth is. And because of all those things, I've been building Glacier. My brother's been building Glacier. Everybody that's on my team has been building Glacier with zero funds, right? I haven't had a paycheck, what I would call a normal paycheck in 8 months. I haven't taken any profits or done anything for over 8 months. And it's because I've stand behind this word of if my investors aren't making money, then I don't either. And so I'm carrying that forward to a new protocol and a new design of what I see is needed on the actual chain, which is, we desperately need competition in the decentralized exchange aspect of Avalanche.
Nice, thanks. Thanks, Austin. Can I just quickly mention, although I want to talk about a lot of what you just said, if you could just like adjust your mic gain down just a fraction, it's just coming in a bit hot.
Sure,
You're
sure.
sounding really good otherwise. I just don't want
This is my
you to miss
game.
it.
I have I bought a really fancy mic, and I'll be honest with you, I'm really good with tech, but for some reason this microphone gives me so much. It's a podcast microphone, man. Look at this thing.
Yeah,
It was expensive at the time, and
I think
okay, so I turned my gain down a little bit. What about now?
I think it's getting better, but maybe just keep some distance from it because you're sounding
Okay.
like you're coming through really clear. Here, just speak for me a little bit.
Hello,
Should
hello.
that? I mean, someone else give me an opinion, please, as well.
Someone tell us something.
Top Gun, thank you. Okay, I think that's good. You're just coming
All
through
right,
much more like natural. Okay,
there
perfect.
we go.
All right, so I mean, oh man, Tomb Forks, how classic. Anyways, I want to skip over the Tomb Fork bit and let's just focus a
Sure.
bit more on what you just said at the end, which is that Avalanche has a need for diversity. Right now, uh, if I'm right, 95% of trade volume runs through one exchange, Trader Joe. Is that
Yep,
still factual? Okay.
that is extremely factual.
So, what does that mean for protocols, in your opinion? Like what difference does that
It
make?
means that if you don't play ball with Trader Joe, which good luck playing ball with them. And this is not a slight to Trader Joe, by the way. They have an amazing team and they're doing great things for DeFi, but you can see that they're not focused on the chain right now, the chain that kind of built them up. And with that being said, on these centralized emission models that I would call like any of these Uniswap V2s, like PancakeSwap, they really pick and choose the protocols they wish to succeed. Otherwise, as part of DeFi and like how we build on it, if you don't have a good LP provider, it's really, really hard unless you build something like a Tomb Fork that has its own share emission to kind of incentivize that liquidity or have any kind of efficient model to build a tradable token on the platform, right? And so with them having 95% of it, what they say goes kind of, right. They really get to pick and choose, and so I think that is anti DeFi, and it's not really their fault. It's just nobody's really stepped up.
Yeah, and I guess this is where the Solidly, implementation matters because how Solidly handles incentivization is just different than those Uni V2s. It's not like Glacier is another Uni V2 coming in to create the same paradigm.
Correct.
You're coming in to flip the paradigm. So maybe you could, for the beginners, just run us through the difference between a Uni V2 and why Solidly makes it easier for like protocols to come on chain.
Sure. Yeah. I think that, at its core, a lot of the same swap mechanics, a lot of the same farming is very similar in Solidly forks, right? You do have gauges instead of what we call farms in Uniswap V2. And essentially you can swap on there for usually cheaper swap rates, 0.2%, and then 0.02% for stables. But where it really gets interesting is, on a centralized emission model like Trader Joe and such, that revenue that actually comes from that fees actually goes back to the platform as kind of their service fee that they use as revenue. But what's really interesting and what's really cool about the Solidly model is all of those fees, 100% of the fees, go back to holders in the form of a governance participation. So you as a user can use our emission token, Glacier, turn it into our governance token, the Glacier, which ends up being an NFT, vote week over week on different pairs, change the course of emissions, and also earn those fees on that LP pair you voted for. So I always like to give an example. If you have a pair A and a pair B, and pair A gets 80% of the votes and pair B gets 20% of the votes, the emissions then go 80% of all Glacier emitted that week will go to pair A and 20% will go to pair B. And also to explain the fees a little bit is that if there's $100,000, let's say in pair A, and you are the only voter on the entire platform, and you were to vote for pair A, you would get $100,000. Now we know that's not going to happen. This is a blown out example for simplicity, but that's very impactful. Not to mention that protocols can actually add an extra bribe incentive by just applying any whitelisted token to their LP pair, which shows an actual, US dollar value that adds on top of those fees. We find it to be an even more efficient model for LP providers and protocol owners to kind of increase that TVL. Whereas in centralized emissions, what we call their emission token is usually like the farm and dump token. So it makes a really impactful flywheel effect of users that want to lock these tokens into governance because you can earn that way, and also want to LP different types of tokens on the ecosystem and on Glacier because you can earn Glacier, which has sustainable value because more people are locking it. And so it's this constant influx of risk versus reward that ties you into this looping mechanism of kind of upward momentum, right?
Yeah, nice. And I can attest to like being on the protocol side, how much easier it is to break into, say, Binance, which is where we like experienced as Oath, the first VE NFT that we got through Thena. That was like, maybe we'll go to Binance in the future and it'll be cool. But then all of a sudden there's this like, I don't know, gateway where now the friction to get in is not about who you know, but just about how you can incentivize users and create trading volume. So it lowered the friction on the protocol side
Yeah.
to actually being able to enter the market. So I can definitely attest to that point. And I remember like when Solidly came out, I read the model, I was like, wow, this seems brilliant. I love the paradigm shift between like you don't have to technically be a liquidity provider whale to like build a liquidity provider position. You can actually start the other way as well, and just do the lock token side and then receive, whatever LP you'd like to earn on, and then just lock those into an LP, and now you're building a position out of nothing.
Yep.
And well, not nothing, obviously you're putting in your principal there, but
For sure.
it's a fascinating paradigm shift. And while I'm not a huge fan of locking mechanisms, I think that there is like an opportunity for the protocol to obviously create tremendous amounts of value. Now, you could look at probably the most successful model so far, which is Velodrome. They've been really propped up, again, no slide on Velodrome, but they've been assisted through these large ecosystem grants to help
Yeah.
offset a lot of that sell pressure. And is that something that Glacier has support of, or like how do you think like the Avalanche network will respond to your arrival, I suppose?
So obviously, I've spoken with the Ava Labs team. They've been very receptive of me being doxxed and being very front facing. They understand my ethos and what I'm trying to do, which is provide, help and assist AVAX to incentivize where they can't. Optimism, Arbitrum, all these L2s are actually not US based. AVAX has had to take a neutral approach in how they incentivize new protocols. They don't want to be on the wrong side of the law, sadly, and the US has been gun ho about making that harder and harder for us. But with that being said, they're offering me things and offering me support, offering me discounts in certain categories of services. Overall, I'm very happy with it. I knew that they weren't going to gun ho and say, yeah, give me 5% of emissions and I'll give you $100,000 to bribe with. I knew that wasn't going to happen. Don't worry, I asked, but I still knew it wasn't going to happen. But still, the support that they're giving me, they do have to remain agnostic. But I think over time, when I assist them through like Twitter Spaces and I'm actually boosting ecosystem activity, I think the conversation will change and we will be able to integrate a little bit further. Even I got offered to get flown out to the AVAC summit, which is pretty cool. I can't do it sadly, but still, nonetheless, that is a huge support to me because like I'm just a hillbilly from Kentucky and I've never even been on a plane. So the fact that they would support me in that way is already really cool. So I am, I have an open relationship with these guys. I speak to them, they speak to me and we try and find resources for other people. So it's really good in my opinion. It's not exactly what we were looking for, but still a very positive experience so far.
Awesome. And I guess let's get into maybe some of the changes that Glacier has over some of the other, like maybe you could give us a baseline and then
Yeah.
what is different with Glacier, just so that there's any specifics covered. Thanks.
Yeah, so the first big one would be the max lock period. This is one that I had to think about a little bit, and where I've seen success. So really, you don't need like some crazy lock period. So ours is 3 months, and the reason that we chose 3 months is because if you have the incentives and you have the drive to continue those incentives and to continue bringing high impact protocols to drive volume into your ecosystem, oftentimes what you're going to see is the same user behavior of trusting the protocol enough to continue max locking that same VNFT. And that's really all we need. I felt like 4 years was just pretty much a max lock and just too much. It's pretty much a permanent lock, sorry. And I think that's just too much to ask of a DeFi user with everything that currently happens in the space. Even at 1 year, it still was just a bit of a too much of an ask. And instead of trying to convince people into doing something they're highly uncomfortable with, why not meet them in the middle, get a 3 month lock, allow people to see that 3 months of how good it can work for them and continue on that process and hopefully add to their position, compound into their position, and let me work and do my job. And then they can do their job of locking and increasing those incentives. So I felt like it was a match made in heaven. And I could be obviously very wrong, but I feel like it will work quite well of getting a lot of max lock voters. So that's one of the big changes. The fee structure is exactly the same. The emission model, you really shouldn't expect any big changes. The other one would be the external, internal bribes. One of the attack vectors of all the Solidly forks is that the internal bribe does have an issue where you can do double claims. And an internal bribe contract pretty much controls the actual fees of the LPs. We have fixed that, so that will be fixed on launch. And I'm trying to think if there's any other impactful changes as far as contracts. And I'm sure there is, but I just can't think of them right now. But nothing drastically different.
Like which like fork did you start with your development?
So it's a velo base.
Okay, cool.
And I think that's what I've got for. I'm sure I'll think of something while we're halfway through a conversation, but and I'll bring it back up. So
does it rebase as well, or?
Oh, that's the other one. Okay, awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you. There is no rebases, and the reason that I chose no rebases is because I actually don't like the fact that there's an anti-dilution method. If you're a whale and you amass a large amount of Glacier and you attain this ownership of the protocol, I really don't like the fact that that person can then for 3 to 6 months essentially maintain that well status. And what if it's a bad actor? And what if we can't dilute him? What do we do in that in that position? I say if you're not putting risk on the table and micromanaging that position, then you shouldn't be getting the benefits of people that are micromanaging those positions, that are fighting for the protocol, that are locking and incentivizing and doing what they're supposed to in the ecosystem. I felt like it was just a bit skewed towards whale mentality when you look at rebases and protocol mentality. And I'm very much retail first in how I present myself. And so I hope that makes sense as to why I've kind of weighed those benefits versus the risk, and I felt like it just weighed in favor of making sure that we didn't have those anti-dilution tactics.
Awesome. Yeah, that sounds healthy to me. I'm just heading over to the AMA questions, guys. If you have any other questions that you're thinking of while we're speaking, feel free to pop them in there. I'm also going to invite Charles up to the stage just to float around. If you see anything, Charles, feel free to.
And I have I'll be honest. I say I have a ton of things to talk about. I love AMA, so like I'll gladly go on rants.
What's your number one rant that you want to have then about Glacier?
So I'll start with this, right? I look at the Solidly models and I see that it's the meta, and I wanted to assure your user base and like anybody that can see this or anybody that can bring the message to is that I'm on AVAX because I love AVAX. I'm building a protocol that supports protocols and retail users, right? Those are the main reasons, and that's my ethos of building on Avalanche and building this. Some people see it as like, oh, there was no Solidly fork, so that's why you're building it. That is one of the reasons, and it's a smart thing to do because it's a niche, it's a hole to fill. But the other reason is that I truly actually do want to see the ecosystem survive and thrive. And I think that it can. I think AVAX Tech is actually miles above some of the other ones, subnets if they're ever taken up. And so I really love this chain. And this is, kind of my give back to them for what I've done in the space. And so that's one of the main things. The other thing is when you look at an overall theme of how these Solidly forks are responding to the market and kind of how they're all starting and this season that you're seeing constantly churn in and out, we're seeing protocols, mercenary protocols at this point is what I'm going to call them, linking up early to get perverse incentives, right? They rake it clean and start dumping emissions because at that point they have no reason to continue on supporting the protocol. What you'll see is they'll start dumping it because, again, it's free, so who cares? And so what you're doing as a protocol leader starting to launch these things, if you're doing it for the wrong reasons, what you do is essentially a cash grab, in my opinion, of just getting any low-hanging fruit partnership you can to get any kind of user acquisition. The problem with that remains that it's 90% rotating capital, very similar to the Tomb Fork days. And what happens is the next shiny thing, the next higher incentives than yours, well, that's gonna, that's just gonna attract them over. And so you're not getting any sticky liquidity. You're not doing anything for the chain. You've just presented a cash grab. And one of the ways that I'm combating that is getting real protocols that are building on AVAX. Yieldjack just came on as an exclusive partner. They've been extremely amazing at helping us and assisting us. We're gonna launch again tomorrow with a collaboration with probably one of the biggest AVAX protocols on there, and show you some of the benefits of that. And we're continuing to meet up with another 3 to 4 localized AVAX projects. We're trying to grab the chain volume that's currently here because that's the stuff that's going to be here when the Solidly fork season dies down. We're trying to be a competitor to the market share and also bring in new TVO. This isn't a cash grab for me. There is real practice to these Solidly models and what it can do for a chain. And so oftentimes do I see these low-hanging fruit partnerships that literally just built protocols on top of Solidly models to extract value, and it's taking money out of your all's pockets, quite frankly. And I'm not going to sit up here and name names because I just don't think it's good proper business practice. But I will say that it's happening. That is why you see the fork season come up so prevalent because of the amount of money that these protocols that they're partnering with are making. It's very easy to churn these things out. And I won't say the coding is easy, but realistically, you as a user have to make that decision of, are you a long-term investor? Are you rotating capital? And if you are rotating capital, that's great. There's a place for it in DeFi. I'm just explaining why, I don't really appreciate it when that's not what I'm trying to build. So that's the point. That's my rant. And I needed to make sure I got that out. So thank you.
Yeah, well, I want to talk first about, because let's tap into each of those, but the subnets that you raised. I mean, do you ever see Glacier running as its own subnet?
Absolutely. I think that being some type of aggregator between these subnets, because there is interoperability between them, if they are to get picked up, another really big thing of AVAX is GameFi, and I think you're going to see a lot of that in the coming weeks of what they're pushing for GameFi and kind of who's backing them in that category. And of course, GameFi usually has some kind of tokenomics applied to it, and I'm not talking GameFi like like these point and click idle games. I'm talking like real games. And so those two aspects of using subnets in some capacity, and they've already kind of offered me support in that category. Ava Labs I'm speaking about, and then Game 5 picking up some of these projects that are maybe early starts or don't really have the funding for any kind of liquidity to chain on the chain. I want to be able to provide that as well. So I think those are two very unique aspects that we're able to tap into, because I've been on AVAX for a year. I've actually come in contact with most of these guys prior to this experience. So it's going to be really cool to see how we can kind of develop both of those types of relationships with subnets and GameFi.
And I mean, I guess I almost don't need to ask, given your branding, but Glacier will probably never be a cross-chain experience. It's probably a pure AVAX.
Yeah, I think that I just don't see the model working multi-chain. And somebody can correct me if I'm wrong. I just don't see how it could work. It gets really messy when you're looking at that VNFT and are you making new VNFTs on another chain? To me, I'm not a greedy man, and I think that if we can bolster new volume on the chain with DEX, with aggregators, bots, and arbitrage trading, that's good enough for me. And if I can bring in new TVL and also excite the current TVL, I think it's a good thing. It's a win-win.
Yeah, and you mentioned like quite a while ago now, but that the V Glacier token is actually an NFT. I was wondering, I guess, like where users will be selling that on AVAX, and if there was considerable volume, would you do something like creating, your own marketplace potentially?
I will say Top Gun is very keen on adding a marketplace. There are some really good marketplaces on AVAX. Now, one of the top ones is, of course, JPEGs. And I'll be honest, I don't really think those guys are going to work with us because obviously we're kind of a competing product to But I would think it would be kind of silly for them not to list us. But there's also a lot of really good NFT platforms because AVAX has really put a lot of funding into the NFT community. And it's one of the better ones comparatively to some of the other chains, obviously, other than Ethereum, because Ethereum's king and all of that.
Yeah, nice.
Samson, I'm just going
And
to jump in here quickly, if possible. Nice to meet you, Lame Hillbilly, by the way.
Yeah, man.
Um,
Nice to meet you as well, Charles.
Dude, every time I see your name, I like want to type, I'm like, oh,
I,
excited, lame. It sounds like an insult, you know what I mean? Like, I just like, I'm
you could
like,
call
oh,
you could call me Austin as well, if
okay,
you're more
cool.
comfortable.
Yeah, awesome, nice. I just wanted to, I had a quick question that I just thought of, that kind of relates to what you just said and what you were saying earlier about partnerships on Avalanche. I was just wondering what you like to see from teams that you would like to partner with, or teams that you're curious about partnering with, so that teams that are going to sort of perpetuate that sticky liquidity, or is there something that you're looking for, or is it like how's the process for like is it their track record for sort of like choosing partnerships and deciding to move forward and making sure that they're not going to be a quote mercenary protocol.
Sure. That's actually an amazing question, and one I actually hadn't even thought of to explain. Yeah, so when I'm in this space, I really like to make real business relationships, and so where some of this is kind of ambiguous based on the actual owner of that protocol, I'm not always going to get it right, but especially with the pre-launch NFTs, there's not much damage these guys can do with what I'm actually giving them. They're going to be given, over 5 weeks, small amounts of these NFTs, and if they're not playing right during that 5 weeks, they'll be shut down. And if they are shut down, then of course they'll be diluted by literally probably like 3 or 4 weeks. So that's the good news about the pre-launch partners. But the other thing is, what am I looking for in a partnership? And I think a really good example is kind of Impermax, and Impermax does work with a lot of Solidly forks. But what really, I was really happy with when I spoke with them is that I had an actual business meeting that was actually professional with the owner that was doxxed, right? And with that, I told them what I was looking for. I told them what I didn't want to see, and they were willing to work with me. Bite Masons was a good example of that. You all have there's this product of Oath and Grain that doesn't have incentives on AVAX, and you all couldn't find that here. And I was able to provide that. And these are protocols that will only help AVAX to be on there. And of course, Ava Labs is very slow to support these kind of protocols, but I'm not. And so those things are very essential to me about bringing high level protocols and high level teams building on AVAX and getting comfortable here to see that it is a good chain, and that will increase taxons on the chain, transactional volume, and really kick off what I hope to be an Avalanche summer. But it's more than just that. I would hope to think that I have a very good intuition about people. And, when I spoke with people like, Samson and we spoke in private and I spoke to the guys at Yieldjack, they had more to offer me than just saying, hey, can I get a free NFT if we just talk for a little bit? It was much more than that, and it went deeper than that. And the people like Yieldjack, they backed us exclusively as one of the OG AVAX protocols. That means a lot. Not only that, but they're tapping me into networks. They want to see Glacier succeed, right? These other value extracting protocols don't really care if Glacier succeeds. They just care if their NFT can extract enough value. And so, if we're having those kind of conversations, and I'm feeling like, well, these guys really aren't bringing anything to me, then I'll whitelist your pair. And I've already turned people down and have whitelisted them, and they can have their own gauge and do what they want and buy into Glacier. But it has to be an engaged partnership where you all want to see me succeed and I want to help you all succeed on our chain. And so I think that's kind of, to simplify it down, is kind of what I'm looking for.
Cool, very cool. That's a great answer. Yeah, and I think there is sort of a level of like intuition that goes into um, forming partnerships, and also for investors as well. Like people who are investing into protocols, I think their intuition plays more of a part of it than maybe they're willing to to admit, or especially with like the team of the protocol that they're wanting to invest in. It's like I think there's more to people sort of um, their 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 gut feeling about how the team conducts themselves, and like the conversations that the types of conversations that they're having. Yeah, cool. And that combined with the sort of trial period for these partner protocols. Cool, man. That's a really good
Yeah.
answer.
What you were explaining is very hard to quantify. I know exactly
Yeah,
what you're saying, but it's very hard to kind of describe openly, because like I know exactly what you're trying to explain, but it's very difficult to fully explain it in a way to understand it. But I got you. I understood what you're
100%,
saying.
100%. Yeah, that was definitely like that. I had to sort of like realize that when I was first
Yeah.
becoming aware of the Bite Masons. I was like, there's something I really like about these guys, and I can't really put my finger on it. I mean, they're doing a bunch of cool
Yeah.
stuff, but like, there's also this other thing that it's like, I don't know, they seem like people that I want to work with and invest in. Excuse me.
I could actually give
Yeah.
you like some data on that you can actually look at. Well, it's not really data, but I'm a bit biased because I know how I come off in AMAs, and I think people can see my passion and my vision. But you'll see a lot of times that you'll invite people, like it's almost like a business transaction. You'll invite them up here on an AMA. They'll speak about mathematics and tokenomics, and they'll sell you a protocol, right? I don't come up here to sell you a protocol. I come up here to let you guys know my ethos and what I'm building. And if you're interested in it, of course, join in, and I'll give you every opportunity to do that. But I think those are very different pitches. And oftentimes, because the space doesn't have that professionalism that, maybe a traditional business would, there's not a lot of people that kind of speak like the Bite Masons do or like I do in the space where our market isn't to sell people these products like you would normally, or talk about the mathematics or how great the protocol is. That's all great. But it's also the team behind it that drives it, and really ultimately leads to its success or failure. Again, granted, there's no rug or anything.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's important how we as protocol leaders speak about our protocols and are careful, with kind of how we introduce new people into our protocol. If you go into my Discord right now, you'll see like 30 messages about not aping into Glacier when it first launches. I actually care about the people that invest in my protocols, and it's very apparent. And so it's always nice to be able to educate new members. Be careful with who you're trusting, in these AMAs, and kind of have intuition and learn to pick up on the type of protocol leaders that have grand gestures and trying to sell you snake oil, and people that are just trying to build cool products and increase the longevity of the space.
Yeah. Yeah. Amen. Um, yeah, and like the proof is in the pudding in terms of like how the protocol um, runs and how successful it is. It's like if I need someone to convince me how good the protocol is, it's like I don't know, it should be pretty apparent.
Yeah.
So yeah, awesome, good answers. I'm just looking at the community questions here. Samson, did you have one that you wanted to pick out, or one that came into your head as we were talking?
Yeah,
Otherwise,
I was wondering, put you on the spot, Austin, but would you be willing to maybe like share screen your Glacier test site and just show everyone what it looks like?
Sure.
Or is that I don't want to put you on the spot like that, but I know people are interested to see like what it looks like, and maybe we can give everyone here a bit of alpha. If everyone promises not to screenshot it, can you write that and just promise, please, that you won't?
Let me find a way to block out my URL, which I don't know a good way to do it, but I do have an idea. So let me try that real quick. I think I could go through OBS and
Yeah,
share the screen. Yep. Okay. I can do it. I can do it. Cool. All right.
cool.
while we're
Let's
on the
do it like
subject
this.
of being earnest people in the space, no screenshots, y'all. Keep your. By the way, I
Let me get
did
some
really
stuff.
like the little graphic, or I don't know, I guess it's like the little short movie that was on the like the teaser for the website. I really enjoyed that. That
Yeah.
was
It's,
cool.
yeah, it was actually made by a community member, and I loved it so much. I was like, we have to. I don't know. It just felt like it was a necessity for me to add that into kind of an intro because I really love UI, and where the UI will be lacking in some things, and it's going to have its own issues, that we're going to be fixing, and we already have started fixing. I think that it has its own unique style, and I really like that about it. That maybe isn't normal to the space, or isn't this like clean DeFi look that everybody kind of defaults to. And so I really wanted to show that off. I'm a big synthwave fan,
It
and I
reminds
wanted to
me
go
of
big.
Reaper Farm and like how it looks different, like you visit and you feel like you're somewhere else. So I wanted everyone to sort of see that and experience. It's got like an arcade vibe, synthwave, right?
Yeah,
That's nice.
exactly. All right,
Yeah.
I think I've got it. I've got it set up. I was setting it up while you are. Make sure. Change OBS. Hoping that works. All right, let me know when you guys can see it.
Yeah, it's coming up.
All right. So obviously we have our let me refresh it, make sure I have the most recent. But yeah, you can see that like the button style is very VHS like. Just all together, just a really colorful, but also this synth wavy ode style blocky. With I think the fonts are amazing. I had a guy that was building a front end for something entirely different, and we used the same assets. But I'll probably have that same guy introduce a new V2. So you can see the rewards. Let's see, bribe, vote, lock, liquidity, and then swap. And if I actually, maybe I can show this. It's cool. But you should see Oath and some of the other favorite pairs that you have there. But yeah, hopefully that's a good enough indication of kind of where we're going with the UI. And probably my favorite thing is the Connect wallet. I think it's a really unique thing. I think all of the buttons are kind of like a unique thing to Glacier.
You haven't announced the Canary partnership yet, have you?
No, that's what I was just thinking when I did that. I was like, oh shit. That's what
awesome.
happens. That's what happens when you go live, man. You never
So,
know what they're
yeah.
gonna show.
Well said. I gotta listen to the recording. I can edit that out if you want.
No, it should be going up pretty soon.
Yeah.
Like obviously we only have one day, so people are gonna know regardless.
Gonna change anything? Yeah, no, definitely a little bit of cool alpha. So yeah, I love the style. I guess, I'm going to be blunt. Like, how are you going to go up against Flare and SolaSnack? I mean, you've talked a lot about, for you, it's about creating partnerships that bring value and obviously having a methodology to, I guess, protect, I almost want to say. But are there any other standout things that are going to, help you create, more value, I guess, over the competition that you can call out?
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple of things that I call high value that, it depends on what kind of DeFi investor and risk tolerance you have. Obviously, being publicly doxxed, I have a lawyer. I have a team that is actually looking to do like full scale, like a business approach, a treasury manager, someone to make articles on the inflows and outflows and looking at the emissions, the bribe efficiency, being very transparent, which is what I've always done, and being very front facing. So that's one of the things that I would call high value that neither of those two will have. Both of them are completely undoxed and non-teams. I know nothing about them. And again, I want to make sure that people understand that I am not going to openly shit on two other protocols. Competition is great, and I hope them all the success. But obviously, my goal is to crush all competition, right? So the other thing is that the high value partnerships. And I think you all will see that, especially before launch with the one that we're going to be announcing next. We're not talking to the people that work on every Solidly fork. Of course, we have, and you do have to play the game to some extent. You have to know the balance. But the other ones are going to be the ones that are actually here when Solidly fork season's over, when all the value's extracted out of all the Solidly forks that didn't know what they are doing and kind of selling their souls to all these partnerships. Don't worry, Glacier will still be building, and we'll have runway to do it. So to me, it's kind of a no-brainer, but I am biased. But those two big things I think will be extremely apparent driving factors in the future of Glacier comparatively to any other competition that were to come on the chain, right? So also Epoch Zero will have emissions, and that is something that apparently is difficult for other forks to do, but we obviously found it, and we will have day one emissions. I don't want to shoot myself in the foot. There's always issues that can come about, but through our testing, Epoch Zero works just fine, and we'll be manually loading it up. But I'm thinking of any of the other unique things that we'll have that is a little bit more impactful. But I think those two will drastically change the course of history for Solidly forks on AVAX comparatively. I've got an AVAX jacket on, Dylan says.
I
That is
didn't even
true.
notice that.
Come on.
Awesome.
Come on, guys.
Dude,
I bleed red.
I need some DeFi merch. Honestly, I'm waiting on Byte Mason's merch. That's what I'm waiting on.
That would be
But
dope.
wearing
Byte
it.
Mason has such a good the font and the logos. I would wear Byte Mason merch. Shout out,
such
Sam.
good
Come on, bring it to
brand.
me.
Yeah. I'm like,
Yeah, Crypto North, like, they're absolute monster. Merge is gonna happen. It's like top of my to-do list once governance, really kicks off. I
top
think
of
we
your
all deserve some
2000
sick.
thing to-do list.
It
Yeah,
is
and
it
I
is
guess,
difficult to run a merch store, by the way. It's kind of like one of your last to-dos whenever you open it, and there's always issues with running these merch stores, so I understand it
yeah,
completely. It's a burden.
yeah, it is. And we want to do it justice as well. And we had to wait for all the branding to get updated and everything because we knew it was, temporary. But yeah, the new look is awesome. Look, I want to put you on the spot. Why Oath? Obviously we've talked and had a good connection, and I'm excited for Oath holders to have an opportunity to enter Avalanche and actually, grow, opportunities on new networks. I think that's obviously very exciting. I'll come back to talk about, I guess, what our plans are on Avalanche, just so we're very transparent. But I wanted to ask what brought you to Oath in the first place, or like to reach out.
So I'll be honest. When Owen had set us up, I had to do a little bit of research because I'm obviously well versed in AVAX, but outside of that, I'm kind of DeFi illiterate in certain areas. But when we connect it, right, I give everybody the same opportunity and the same respect, and try and understand what you all bring to me in value really isn't the initial TVL or any of that. It's really, to me, a high value partnership because you share the same ethos as me. You also build amazing protocols, and I think that you are going to be wildly successful in everything that you're doing here. And I actually truly believe that this is not that's not just some marketing hype that I'm shilling out of my ass. I actually do believe that you all be wildly successful. So with that, obviously that success is something that I'm drawn to. But having someone in my corner with a similar ethos as me means that I have a friendly in my corner that wants to see the same success I want to see for them. And I'm telling you, in DeFi, that is very rare. Samson, I'm sure you know this. But the value that brings of having a team of people that feel the same way is immeasurable in terms of what you all bring to me comparatively. And I hope to be able to provide that to you all through Glacier as well. Because if we all look at everything just by mathematical numbers, DeFi is never going to grow. It's about business practice and execution, and I think that you all bring both of those. So that's really where the value is for me.
Nice. Yeah, and I think that touches nicely on what Charles was trying to, say earlier, which is I think the Byte Masons is that community, or was for me. It was like, okay, there's other people out here that are, we're actually trying to create something that grandma can safely use and, not get completely wrecked, and
Yep.
trying to actually improve the standards around here because there are a lot of predatory practices. Like 4-year lockups are fucking mental. Like I can't
Yeah,
believe,
it's
I can't
crazy.
even believe I have 4-year lockups. Like I must have problems.
We've all
But
been there, Samson.
it happens. I'm down bad. But look, I want to stick back on. Tell me a bit more about, I guess, the team. So there's you and your brother. Like, how many people are helping to make this a reality?
So we have me, my brother, Avery, and Jimmy, which is a team that I linked up with early in the Tune Fork days that I really do trust immensely. I don't trust a lot of people in the space, and these are another set of brothers that are building a RPG game on Phantom that just won actually the Phantom Hackathon. But both kick ass. His Jimmy is the main dev there. They're both doxed, which is great for me because I put a lot of stuff behind my name and the trust that I have, and so that's not easy to trust and bring people into my space. So we have those two as well. We have Knuckles, which is my front end dev, who came in most recently comparatively to everybody else. I have another assisting dev named LB. who I've been in contact with for well over a year that helped me in my early days of DeFi when I didn't have any dev and no networking. And so I've been in contact with him for almost a year, and he's always helped me and always, rang true. And then lastly is Forker, who actually he trades futures on coffee, which I know sounds kind of odd, but he actually knows the market. He knows he knows market and also can do a hell of a lot of work on kind of explaining bribe efficiency to people and giving numbers out to people that are quantifiable for you all to read, kind of like a treasury report that I think will be quite paramount for the success of Glacier and you all to understand, oh, wow, Glacier is actually hyper efficient and it's a good time to invest in looking at value spots. So that's kind of the team that is created. And I do plan to be quite aggressive in growing it by at least double by the first 6 months to 12 months. Grant, we launch into success.
That reporting is so valuable, and I don't know if you're familiar with Beethoven, but they have a guy
they're
named
amazing.
Okay, cool. I was gonna say, for us, we're using that as like the benchmark, right? Like we have to either meet or exceed this Beethoven document to, I think, be delivering, on to continue pushing for success and just be hungry to push those standards. I was just gonna make you aware of that, so I'm glad you're already familiar.
Beethoven is an extremely professional team, probably one of the best in the DeFi space. Their front end is amazing, and everything their team pushes out is so well thought out. Truly, hats off to them. I think they are really an extremely intelligent team.
We're so blessed to work so closely with them, actually, here on Phantom and also on Optimism, and even just like their implementation of Reliquary and how much justice they did in explaining, I guess, the intricacies of that new software to their audience and like held everyone's hand through that. I mean, couldn't imagine a better actually like doing it first. And I just want to hug every single one of them so much for giving the Byte Masons all that love and positive feedback too. I think hopefully that sets the standard for the Byte Masons ongoing, and like every other Reliquary fork wants to pay homage, because that's the kind of positive brand reputation that
I have a
I'm
question
sure
for you, Samson.
All right. Yeah, go ahead.
Is Kronos giving you that same? Because I know Kronos is using Reliquary. Is it not?
Yeah, no, they are. So I've noticed, I don't mean to be like, I don't know what the word is, but I do go through the communications because I'm curious, like, what are they saying about Reliquary? How are they explaining it to their users? Do they understand all of the possibilities yet? And when I review their art, their material, they mention us. They talk about the benefits correctly. When I'm on AMAs with them, they can explain it in technical details that I think are sufficient for people getting an understanding. And yeah, I've been quite impressed. I'm honestly like, again, I think it's because Beethoven had so much material that they didn't even have to they can go read Beethoven's, like they've already done all the hard work. And for us, we're really looking forward to looking at Kronos in a couple weeks or even a couple months and doing, pulling out the data and comparing Ramses and Kronos, for example, and seeing if this reliquary model actually holds up when applied across all these pools, because it is the first time anyone's doing it with such scale. We've been doing the digit.xyz open beta, and that's going quite well. I recommend the audience go check that out. They're really cool financial NFTs. But yeah, I'm very excited to see their development. When I spoke with them originally, they were planned on just doing it on the voter side, Austin. So they were going to keep the lock, but you got like this maturity element to, I guess, a more complex curve. You know how the decay is linear. They could maybe put some more interesting curves there. So I was like, oh, guys, I mean, I don't think that's true to Reliquary. What it really is about is sticky liquidity, and what you want is no lock. Like, locks are bad. If anything, we want to get rid of the lock entirely. So you might want to find another application, like maybe on the LP side. And I just was so excited, like, when they decided they were going to do it, because I've been like talking to Justin Beavis about this for maybe like 18 months. And like waiting for the day when we could finally like see this transition over to like a smarter, healthier system. And is that something that Glacier would be open to in the future? Is it just something where you guys could move to a V2, or what's your plan?
I think for me, I have to be able to explain it in a way that, of course, a grandma could understand it. And I think Beethoven's already done a great job. I'm looking for any optimization and sticky liquidity I can find. I thought it was an extremely an extremely huge asset, and I'm extremely interested in to see how Kronos implements it. But of course, there's always room for that kind of optimization and trying to be bleeding edge. That's what this space is all about. And yeah, especially because I have you all in my corner, I think that it would be a really cool transition. And if people are from my community that don't understand what Reliquary is, it is a alternative to the Master Chef contract that is wildly different in its approach, and looks to be quite effective. So it'll be really interesting to see how Kronos implements it. I think it's going to be great for you all, obviously, to start seeing it kind of being widespread in DeFi. And I think you will start to see it a little bit more because that's now what Beats and Kronos. Is there anybody else that you know that are using it?
I've seen in the roadmap for one of your competitors, actually, Solisneck, they have
Oh, okay.
mention of implementation. I'm not too sure what that means. I think they were planning on doing it on both the LP and the voter side. So
Is that for
uh,
launch or is that in the roadmap?
I think it's in the roadmap, but like I don't have all the details about these platforms, and I'm not really
It's
too
hard for me
sure.
to it's hard for me to keep up to, man. Don't
Yeah,
worry.
that's a lot going on right now, but we're, I think Reliquary is not required right now. Like you're saying, it's still a theory. I'm excited to see it play out. Um, I'm optimistic, but I think I would like to see, like, I think it's actually a way that even like a protocol like Velodrome could be potentially rattled, as if a reliquary model is much more effective. Like even the incumbent solidly models could be at risk if they do not
Yeah.
upgrade to something that actually like can retain that, you said 80%, 90% mercenary liquidity, so creating a system where you're rewarding the people that do believe in your protocol long term, where they do want to farm your protocol long term, like that is attractive. And as a protocol, like that's the sort of holder that I'd be wanting to operate with. So really, really looking forward to that. Not to get too sidetracked, but yeah, Charles, any other questions that, I mean, you gave us a good stack. Do you think that we've gone through a lot of your majority? I'm just pulling up. You mentioned something about Platypus as
Oh
another
yeah.
exchange alternative. Did you want to maybe dig into that and
Yeah,
see
no,
what's there?
I think Austin covered it kind of, but I guess my question was sort of there, you've got Solosneck popping up as well, but like we mentioned, AVAX is so dominated by Joe, and they're not solidly. Platypus is doing something. They're sort of a stable swap um, type protocol, and they're doing something very different from Solidly. I was just wondering if you see the market share that you're hoping to grab. You see that being sort of an uphill battle against a lot of these other dexes, like pulling some market share for yourselves, or if you think that it's sort of carved out, um, it's carved out a bit because of how different the model is from what exists on AVAX already.
So, I mean, comparatively to the other competitors, we don't know where the chips are going to fall as far as taking market share from them. It's going to be an early race for like, initial hype APRs and things like that. But as far as like the current model, Platypus actually lost a lot of momentum. They had a recent exploit. So their stable swap platform fell short by about 8 million, and they lost a little bit of user trust. Not to say that they're a bad team. I think Platypus is an extremely intelligent team. And as far as Trader Joe, where I think that this niche really is shown as to be, it's going to be impactful, this solidly wave on AVAX, is that Joe started spreading out to Arbitrum and BNB quite fast. They've already started kind of fracturing out their liquidity to these other chains and looking for the benefits of Arbitrum and looking for the benefits of BNB to kind of host them because they've kind of been stagnated on AVAX for so long. And I think that's a lot to do with they didn't have a lot to offer other protocols. So how are they going to get liquidity? And I think that it's going to make them innovate quite fast on the models that they're presenting. But I also think that with those two models in mind, being Platypus and Joe, there's a new player in town that's able to offer different types of incentive structures for their user base. And most of them are very receptive to it. Over the 6 to 7 AVAX native protocols that I've spoke with, some of the top players in the entire game, minus the two that we just mentioned here, they're very receptive to moving liquidity, moving some POL over eventually, and beginning to move their community over in a way to excite what hasn't been excited for quite some time. So I don't think that market share will be difficult. Granted that you have a team that's competent enough to kind of execute on the vision of the Solidly fork.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. And what you were saying earlier about, choosing your partner protocols or your partner teams sort of wisely, I think is definitely something that is beneficial in the mid to long term.
Yep.
After that initial surge of all these protocols jumping on the sort of bandwagon, it's like that's going to pay off in the
Yeah.
long run if you've got a good extended team around you. Yeah, cool, man.
Well,
Yeah,
I got
great question too.
um is there going to be an analytics page on your
So we're probably going to launch the Dune Analytics, but we'll eventually move into like a localized one that you can find right on the website. Just so that these Solidly forks, to be quite frank, are straight up spaghetti code. Andre did a number on the original implementation of it, and it has not been wildly improved on any iteration. Velodrome, I guess, would be kind of the most apparent, but I see Sunfire typing. He understands the pain. And so it's actually, there's a ton of things you can fork for these analytic pages. I've already sent some to my devs, but obviously I wanted to make sure that, like, as far as like attack vectors and some of the issues that we know about were fixed first. But yes, it's very important to me, because if Forker is going to be able to produce high level documentation on the inflows and outflows of the ecosystem, it is absolutely essential that we have some type of analytics to be able to kind of mull over and look to be, if we want to, add dynamic fees, should we be increasing our fees or decreasing our fees, and being competitive but not giving out too much perverse incentives. And so it's absolutely a necessity to have the analytics.
Yeah, cool. I mean, that's one of the most like frustrating things about when I go to these platforms is just like I just don't like a black box,
Yeah.
The
No, I
growth,
do want a custom one.
awesome. All
Um,
right, well, questions, Charles. I'm not sure about you. I mean, I might throw it out to the audience, Now's a great chance if you've thought of anything while we've been speaking. If you want to come up and speak, we'd love to hear your voices. Don't be shy. But otherwise, yeah, let's just see if anything rolls in. Or do you have any other rants maybe that I could fire you up on, Austin? What are your
I'm trying to think, this space, I do have one, of course. I always have one in the back pocket. This space is immature in a lot of areas. There is a lot of perverse incentives, and it attracts a certain crowd to DeFi, and it can be exhausting. I'm sure Sam and Charles, that the ask of DeFi users and what is available to protocol leaders is drastically different, and that mismatch often leads to soured marketing attempts of high APRs, and it's this really weird place right now, and a lot of people, it really chews up and spits out as far as like teams that are building in it. And I'm not saying that to complain. I'm just saying it's a reality of where DeFi's at. And one of my goals and one of my missions is, of course, to carry it forward and do anything positive to the space that I can. Obviously, I have big dreams of creating a philanthropy thing for DeFi, and I have a lawyer that wants to help me with it and set it up where you can actually, invest into actual charities and deposit cash, or USDC or whatever it is, and participate in many different charities. And that's kind of one of my overall goals. Is I do genuinely just want to help people, and I've been able to do that in DeFi in several different avenues. And if we had more people kind of like that, just probably in the world, but also in DeFi, the space could grow a hell of a lot better than what it is right now. We have so many grifters that come in and they're able to amass. I just saw a pre-sale go up for like $1 million today, and I know the team behind it, and it's horrifying that those investors bought into that. And it's just crazy because people are drawn to, oh, I could make 20% APR a month, or I can make 20% a day, or whatever the incentive is. It's just it's exhausting to try and compete with that when you're just trying to apply real business principles to your protocol and build something special. So yeah, that's my rant.
Should
Awesome. And what about Charles?
oh, I was just gonna say you should change your name to Wholesome Hillbilly.
Yeah, man. That's what some people tell me. My brother calls me the welfare of DeFi after I gave that $450 million back and refused to take money. And it's like a principled thing that if I can be public and front facing and successful, do everything the right way, then the space can actually change, right? If I can see the same success as some of the grifters we see that are able to acquire mass amounts and be completely anon. And quite frankly, most of these anon teams are like 20-year-old kids or even younger, and they fight internally and then make big drama about it externally. Mind you, there's like 50 million to 100 million in their protocol. That to me is insane, right? If you're an investor with a large amount of capital or you're outside of DeFi looking in and you see a bunch of 16, 17, or even 20-year-old people fighting over a protocol internally about some shit they said to each other. That's insane. The space will never grow if we have that kind of attitude and this kind of dickish behavior between protocol leaders. And we have to snuff them out and do better as investors and as protocol leaders.
So what if there's someone, in the audience that's like listening to you speak right now and they're saying, fuck, like Wholesome Hillbilly's got it, like I really want, like I fuck with the vision and like I want to get involved. Like what would you say to those people?
I mean, if they want to get involved with the Glacier protocol, it will be launching on the 30th, which is tomorrow. Holy shit. Man, time flies fast. And we'll be live and I'll be communicating everything through our Discord. I'm assuming you're asking me to shield here. I don't know. Sam, are you asking me to shield? Because I will.
More of like, I mean, you can chill. I mean, that's what we're here for. But as well, like, what if I wanted to like be a part of the team? Like
Sure.
what are some things that people can do to help out that would matter to you or matter to the protocol and start to get more involved? Because one of the conversations I get a lot of with my, fortunate position with the Bimasons is like trying to connect people to like leaders that have good values. We have so much talent in our community. I wish I could help service everyone and like give everyone like with my time enough of an opportunity to like compliment or like contribute. And I invite anyone listening to do so with oath. And Charles and I especially are like the two easiest people to talk to about getting involved with that. But maybe they're wanting to hop into something brand new. Oath is kind of developed. There's a lot of people around here. You have to fight for that attention. And what Austin's making is something a bit more tighter, a bit more maybe perhaps even exciting at the moment. So I wanted to give you an opportunity to say like what you're looking for, right? You mentioned you
Sure.
wanted to double your team. Like what, so funny, Noel. I see Sunfire everywhere. It's absolutely shocking.
Yeah. I mean, he's
Sunfire.
everywhere for sure. But yeah, that's actually a really good point. And oftentimes I don't get to speak to communities that actually have like real builders in it. And so it's a nice breath of fresh air. With me, I'm not looking for people that are just doing contract work. I'm looking for people with a similar vision in kind of my ethos. And if you're looking to build, products that have vision and products that are bleeding edge and are trying to be competitive and you feel like there's something of value you can bring, still to this day, even after a year, I respond to every DM. I never turn my DMs off. Please reach out to me. I have conversations with thousands of community members and it's exhausting, but it's totally worth it because there's a lot of people that just want chances like me. I took a huge risk and I made it work. But not everybody has that same opportunity. So please reach out and talk to me if you feel like there's something of value you can definitely add. And I would be more than willing to kind of entertain that and see if there's a place to meet. Because I told you I'm trying to double the team size and we're trying to build out rapidly. There's a lot of things we want to do for Glacier, and right now we don't even have the team size to do it. I need team members. I need people that can build that I can trust. Because if I trust my team, then I can come up here and talk as confidently as I have been today, right? And that means something because that means I'm a better protocol leader, and that means that the vision that I have can actually get put out onto the chain and be executed. And so I need good people.
Definitely do. And a lot of what you're saying just reminds me of Beavis when he started and having open DMs and giving everyone those opportunities. is vital. I mean, that's how I'm on this stage, right now speaking with you. And yeah, I hope that there's someone, maybe that's listening to the recording that can hear your enthusiasm and hopefully is excited enough to speak out, because, what I realized, everyone, is like no one else is going to come and do it. If we're here, we're the guys that care, guys or girls, guys generally. It's up to us to actually create these safe, sustainable, places where grandma doesn't get wrecked. And yeah, anyone can get involved. 80% of it is participation and showing up and actually contributing. And, really, even if you're listening to this today, which is the 29th of March where I am, and I guess 29th for you now too,
That's right.
Wholesome
It
Hill.
is.
You know, it's people are only 2 or 3 years ahead of you. Like, that's how old this industry is. It's very immature. And
Yep.
in terms of experience, like your life experience is actually going to be the most valuable thing. And
Absolutely.
like what I found is that this whole opportunity in this space is more than anything, it's just like really about applying yourself and taking a shot, because you'll probably be surprised at how useful you can be, even if you don't really know anything about how a bank works or all the things that you would assume that you might need to know to get started in this industry are false.
And
it's
so
just
many people, there's so many things that are so nuanced that you probably wouldn't even think could apply, right? Like, I was an operations supervisor, now I'm a protocol leader, but I was a good manager and I understood people, and that's what gave me the experience to be able to do this. There's so many things that if you apply yourself, you'll find oftentimes that you'll have the same skill set. That's exactly what's needed in DeFi, right? We need experienced users and people that are uncomfortable with DeFi to be more comfortable in it, and they need to see other people that maybe came from the same roots as them to make themselves feel more comfortable, or make themselves more at home to engage in these protocols. And so, if you're somebody that writes Medium articles, or your day job is something entirely different than DeFi, I can guarantee you, through just applying yourself, there is something that carries forward from life experience that you can bring at and find your niche, and make it monetary gainful for you, to apply. It's just part of getting you in here, because we don't have like what traditional sense DeFi TradeFi has, where we have all these subsets and work groups and different styles of working that makes the regular economy work. We don't have that solidified in DeFi. So right now you can really capture that market, because some of these spots haven't even been filled, but they're an absolute necessity, and we have to see them filled eventually. So it's literally the best time.
Yeah, absolutely. I love telling people like who I run into, and they're like, I don't really like what I'm doing. I'm like, well, let me tell you about a little world called DeFi and how you can probably change everything by just showing up and participating. And it is one of the best like pills that you can give someone, is like, I don't know,
Mhm.
a window into a new world. My background's in professional gaming. I told your Discord earlier, and that experience and like being involved in esports organizations, like I didn't realize how much that would prepare me for working in a semi-anonymous crypto world, because obviously I didn't even know that was possible. But here we are. Like, I'm kind of shocked that like even the most obscure things that I did when I was younger and a teenager, like are coming up and being valuable to me here. So I encourage everyone in this room and listening afterwards, to go for it. Come and get involved in these systems and these protocols. Come build the future, and don't let you talk yourself out of being like that being a possibility, because no matter what, if you're bringing, like I said, if you're showing up and participating, you're like literally 80% of the way there, maybe even 90% of the way there. The other 10% is just finding the right people, and for
Yep.
me, that was the Bike Masons. For Lame Hillbilly, he's building his own family, and I
Yeah.
encourage everyone to come and check it out and get involved and become governors of these things, and let's
And
go.
also, you're gonna get imposter syndrome. I get it every day, right? We're making new waves in this scene that has never seen half of the stuff that we're building, and it's completely normal to have that feel. I hope I'm kind of speaking from my own experience, but I do think it's quite normal to have that imposter syndrome of like, what the hell am I even doing? I get it all the time, and it can sometimes feel debilitating, but that's why it's good to have like people like Samson in the space or other people that you can rely on to kind of speak with and talk to about these situations and understand that what we're doing is of value, and that's very important for just human nature in general. And yeah, it's another important thing to think about is that even if you don't think you're going to fit in, and even if you feel like you have imposter syndrome, you just have to keep going, right? If I stopped after I was a moderator in a Tomb Fork that failed, I wouldn't be here talking to you all about Glacier. And yeah, it's I don't take it for granted. It's an extremely special place, and it's gifted me a lot of opportunities that a normal hillbilly would not get.
Yeah, and shouts out to Noel XD as well in the audience, who I think is on this journey, whether he realizes it or not, but just
Hell
through
yeah.
applying it, you're like, and Charles, you're another one, like, and me, we're all just like, we all stumbled into, so it's amazing. Let's keep it going. Are there any further follow-up questions about Glacier? I didn't mean to sidetrack it into some
Um,
motivational hype
We got to do a
at the end.
podcast, Samson, where we just hype people up to get them in DeFi.
yeah.
Go.
You guys, I'm just having a great time. That would be such a good tangent to sort of like close out on. But Sunfire had a question from much earlier that I would owe him an apology if I didn't get to it. And yeah, I on just on a last note, that all of what you just said really resonated with me. And yeah, shout out to Samson for having his DMs open to me, and shout out to you and everybody else who's trying to do some good in the space. Okay, Sunfire was wondering. Um, he noticed how the your private seed raise was slightly different than some other solidly forks, and he was just wondering how you modeled that, and what net effects that you wanted to see from that. Sorry to keep you up late
Sure.
here.
That was actually I'm glad you actually covered that, because that should have been something I talked about. I'm US doxed, so it's not a private seed sale. It was a NFT sale, because I'm giving VNFTs, and I'll explain that. Is that whenever I do a capital raise, I have like this in my head, and everybody that raises capital should respect the people that you're taking money from, to respect them enough. It's a fiduciary duty, if I can say that word right, that I have, that I need to make sure that what I'm doing isn't, and I'll bring up this word again, perverse incentives, aren't so much that these people are getting liquid tokens and then the token 50x's, and then that would be irresponsible of them not to sell at that point. So what can I do to design something and make it where they can't dump on retail investors? I can't tell people to buy in when I know people can just dump on them, right? That would have been a great cash grab. I could have done a public sale, but it was paramount to me. So a couple things I did is the minimum was 10K. So right off the bat, that's going to limit the amount of risk that you can take if you're just a normal DeFi user. And that was very important to me, is that people that had 10K, I even had private conversations with, I'd say about 95% of all of the people that were putting money in, and explained the risk in detail, which is over like 20 or 30 people. And so the goal here was raise the minimum purchase size, and then also every bit of it being sold is a VNFT 3-month locked. So what that's going to do, and what you'll see is different, is that I'm not giving any liquid tokens out, because I want the people that are investing at this time, that are getting a discount, to have a longevity outlook on their investment. Look at what this can do over the next 3 months, and hopefully they continue to lock, and I think most of them will. But with that being said, you're not going to get any dumping on your head. There's literally no sell pressure other than emissions when we start. And so with those two things married together, because there's a 10K minimum, there's going to be a lot of buyers for Glacier as well. A lot of people exhaust their buyers because they have a public pre-sale, because they're just trying to money grab. And it'll often go to you'll see 400K raised. And then when the token launches, there's no transactional volume, because absolutely everybody bought that wanted to. So it was that merriment together of making sure I wasn't giving the VCs too much of a deal. And if they were going to get a good deal, it had to be an equal risk that they had to take, which was the 3-month lock. So that was a big thing for me, and it was a very hard sell. If you could imagine, I raised 250K almost. And with 100% locked, that's not easy for investors to swallow. And there was a lot of trust that needed to be had. And I'm glad that I was publicly doxxed and able to give that trust to people.
That's cool. That's really cool. Yeah, I'm glad we covered that because um, I didn't know, and that's really interesting. And like Null said in the chat, that's really good for small bag plebs like myself. Yeah, I'm in the same boat there. But yeah, that's really cool. I don't totally know like the dynamics between being doxxed and doing like private sales. Um, but
In the
yeah,
US, IDOs are kind of looked down upon, I'll be honest with you, unless there's like entities involved. And it's a gray area like everything in DeFi because the US makes it entirely impossible to operate in this space in a way that you feel completely confident in being lawful. It's quite disappointing, but it is what we have right now, and I'm going to continue to try and stay in as much white zone as I can. But yeah, it's I did it for the small bags because I really do believe this, and I always have this kind of saying that $1 or $1 million into my protocol means the same to me. If you put money in, it's because you're trying to better yourself or better your family, and you may not have the same opportunities in your area. And so it's important that I respect any value of investment. And I think hopefully most people that have came in contact with me do feel that that I have that responsibility weighing on me all the time. And it's important for all of us protocol owners to kind of feel that. And so if they don't, then who keeps them, who keeps them kind of in line, right? So it's just something that I personally had to challenge myself to do.
yeah, nice.
All
Well
right.
said.
Speaking of team, like, or speaking of this sale and tokens, like Sunfire's raised. What about the team allocation? Like, what's your incentive in all of this? If you don't
Sure.
mind
I
me
guess
hearing.
it's no, of course. The team wallet's actually publicly doxed now. I can speak on it a little bit. Is that I made a decision to 100% lock team tokens. I think I make it my mission to not make as much money as I can here. But we are completely locking our allocation, and it is our mission to earn the exact same way that users earn, which is voting, right? We want to incentivize the ecosystem the same way. We want to earn the exact same way. And so week over week, my profits, my McDonald's money comes from the same McDonald's money that you all use, which is voting. And I think that was very important because I wanted to make sure that, of course, the team will have liquid tokens. So the reason that we'll have liquid tokens is because there's an initial distribution, and we don't want to dilute everyone by using 18% of the supply all as as VNFTs, because we would just be a powerhouse and nobody would do anything with our tokens because they would say, what's the point of even locking these? So we'll have a pretty hefty amount to be able to control core pool emissions, but no Glacier will be sold by team members as long as I'm active.
Have you guys figured out what your like pool emissions are going to be yet, like in terms of weights? Um, because one thing I noticed, I guess, in observing, and maybe some like, feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, but looking at Equalizer, for example, on Phantom, they've managed to, I think, like pull up. I'd say at the start they were definitely like faded. Most people were like, "Nah, I ain't touching it." That's my read. And then all of a sudden it changed. It was like, "Holy shit, this is kind of not a rug," and or
Yeah.
something. And they were smart because I feel like they focused a lot of their efforts on one pool. It was just the FTM USDC pool, and it's massive. It ended up being like at one point 42% or 50% of their vote. Like, and now they get $60,000 a week in just fees from this one pool because they focused everything there. So I'm wondering, like, how do you model something like that, and like, what's your plan to break in? Because is it better to have like a bunch of pools that perform okay, or is it best to just sort of put all your eggs in like focus, yields on the thing
So
that the most revenue?
So we have four pools that we're really going to be focused on, which is going to be the WETH, the AVAX, the BTC, and of course the Glacier pairing. We'll be going pretty hard on the AVAX one, but quite interestingly enough, we'll actually be doing an AVAX USDT.E pairing. And that's because it will be a direct competitor with Trader Joe, and it's a lower hanging fruit on their liquidity thing. And I think that we can get arbitrage and trade bots on it a lot faster than if we try and focus on like AVAX USDC, which is a much more popular pair on Trader Joe. But just in terms, we'll also be highly incentivizing that pool with our own team emissions, treasury emissions, because that's going to be a lot of transactional volume on AVAX. And of course, that would be a lot of fees for the team, and the amount that I can keep in my war chest, the better, especially early on when we'll get a lot of high traction. But yeah, it's really really hard to to manage and model that out, because you're gonna have swaying prices on Glacier, you're gonna have swaying prices on votes, and the emissions that it brings, and it's very complicated, and it takes a week to week pivot, quite honestly. So it's one of those things. Of course, we're gonna have to model it out as it kind of over time goes. And I don't think it was Hoop's entirely intention to kind of do what he did after talking with him a bunch. But he's an extremely intelligent guy, and I'm happy to have him in my corner. And he's been paramount to the success of where Glacier's at right now, with his back end help. So definitely a lot of talks with him about kind of being hyper efficient on the pools and how we manage them.
I was a little disappointed to hear that you wouldn't personally be voting for the Oath pool, but that's okay. I won't hold it against
I
you.
never said I wouldn't have a personal bag now.
Yeah, fair enough, fair enough. Yeah, I'm quite excited. This conversation's got me really fired up before. Coming in, I'll be frank. Between Solace Neck, I mean, I kind of thought it was a meme. I guess they have this meme token idea. Like it's almost the opposite of what you're going for. It's in a way, I think Glacier's going for more of like a cool, like calm, collected, and I want to say even like professional, despite the synthwave vibe. But it's
Yeah.
synthwave really in, so I think that's really great. But
Yeah, it's actually one of the top trending 2023 designs is synthwave. That was last year, so maybe it's changed now. But yeah, I mean, a lot of people in the space focus kind of on the memeing of things, and they've built personalities around these memes, and I just really can't get behind it. I think branding is very important in how you present yourself, and it's not for everybody, and especially in the DeFi scene, you can move millions of dollars behind people with profile images of memes, and so I get it. There's money to be made regardless if you have meme profiles or memeing on your branding. But me personally, it's not really the style that I go for. And if you want to break through to new investors, I think you have to be a little bit different than that, right? You have to do a little better. And that's not a slight to Solid Snake either. I'm just speaking about my opinion.
awesome. Yeah. Well, I'll put it to the chat one last time for any other questions. Otherwise, we can let you get some rest. This has been a fantastic conversation. So I really appreciate you coming through. And
No, it was amazing, dude. I really enjoyed this AMA. A lot of unique questions, because if you can imagine, I've been doing AMAs weekly for
yeah,
almost a full year, and it's always nice to get refreshing people and questions, and community members engaged in the kind of topics that I enjoy talking about. Right, my fiance kicks me out of the door all the time, and DeFi is a trigger word for her. So anytime I get to share my vision and my passion, man, it's exciting. I love it, even at 1 a.m.
yeah, awesome. Good question actually from Mithrist. And this was something I forgot about. Like one of the other partnerships, you have these. I guess it's not a partnership. The integrations that are really important is with aggregators, right? Like I think a lot of
Absolutely.
people will discover, they use aggregators almost like a front page. It just takes the meta of DeFi and abstracts it away for the user. So they'll see in the swap route, Glacier, and that'll maybe be the prompt for them coming and checking out your platform. So who are you partnering with in an aggregation point of view, and who is the number one in that space over there? Is it 1inch or like
So
like for Firebird? I don't know if but that's
So
actually the soft.
Firebird is somebody we're talking to right now, obviously. Paraswap is one of the top aggregators, which is an SDK that you just have to complete, which we're doing. And then one of the ones that we kind of have exclusive to us is that we have Yieldjack, which is the number 3 aggregator, which is a 0% fee aggregator on Yieldjack, which is quite nice. And they are obviously are whitelisting us as well. So we'll have 3. So pretty much what I've heard is that aggregators are pretty much like a majority of the volume on the actual platform. Nobody really swaps on your site. They'll LP, they'll vote, they'll do all of that, but swapping on your site won't happen. So you really are expecting arbitrage and trade bots to really take over on your volume.
Awesome, thanks. Yeah, I mean, Yield Yak, that's exciting. I don't know how they make their money. It's really weird, but
Well,
you know,
sadly, they're not as incentivized as they should be, and for how much help they've given us, I want to do everything I can to put their name in other people's ears.
I mean, that's one of the like first telegrams I ever joined actually was the Yield Yak telegram.
Really,
Back when, yeah, absolutely. Back when everyone was joking that Yield Yak would be more expensive than Bitcoin. And I don't know what the price is right now, but they actually got really freaking close. You wouldn't believe it. And that was when I realized the power of DeFi actually. But yeah, AVAX has got a place in my heart. I haven't thought about coming back, but after speaking with you, I'm going to. I'm going to come and check it out and try. And I want to get in on the Glacier ride as well. So yeah, pretty excited. Obviously, I should have done a disclaimer at the start of this. Like, I'm not a financial advisor, and neither is Wholesome Hillbilly or Charles or
yeah,
any of us guys. Like, do your own goddamn research, and this can be part of your research, but it's purely for your entertainment. So I hope you've enjoyed
absolutely.
the conversation.
Assume that I've lied the entire time. That's actually true. Like you should really just like dig into it that deep. If you assume that nothing I said was true, and you look at everything on a factual standpoint, look at that first, and then secondary, look at the ethos, look at the vision, and look at the things that I'm saying, and try and line it up. It takes a lot to be an investor in DeFi, to be honest. So shouts out to you all. It's a huge risk and it's a huge undertaking to try and research with how fast this place moves. But it's absolutely essential that you do it so that we don't have people blaming the wrong parties when bad things happen in the space. But yes, I am not a financial advisor. I am literally from Kentucky, and I am an actual hillbilly.
Yeah, I want to add as well. I mean, I kind of teased earlier that I would mention how like our plans for Avalanche, just so that we were sort of being transparent with at least development priorities. So some of the audience may be familiar with the vVoter Vault, which is quite useful for a protocol like Glacier. Essentially, what it does is takes your locked NFT, which you use to vote, and it automates the process of compounding and voting for you. Unfortunately, we're at a point where it's not exactly scalable, at least to the point where we can feel confident to expand to more different protocols. Currently, it's on Binance for Thena and for Optimism for Velodrome. So this is the sort of service that we would like to bring to Avalanche first. I mean, if people are following my Twitter, I've just said recently that Reaper Farm, as we all love it, the LP compounder, similar to something like Yield Yak, is not really a priority right now. The focus is actually on, single yield, single side yield, and growing out single side yield for things like Ethos, for things like Granary, that have a much higher product market fit. The reality is that yield in LP compounding is mostly low, and like that's not going to keep us relevant as well. So the focus has been elsewhere. Not sorry to disappoint everyone. So we won't be offering Glacier LP compounding or anything like that. I'm sure Yieldjack will be. Is that fair to say? Or
Correct. Yeah, they'll also do derivative tokens with a Black Hole Glacier,
I
which is
don't
going to be pretty
really,
cool.
I don't really know what that means. I'd love to understand.
I'm sure there's a lot more complication. This is just an initial conversation of some of the things they plan on bringing, but that was one of the things. But obviously, they'll also have auto compounding vaults and things like that.
Cool. Yeah, so I just wanted to clarify, like I'm familiar with Yieldjack. They've been around a long time. Yieldjack.com, I want to say. I don't want to botch it, but um, if you're like looking for LP compounding or whatever, I mean, it's there. But yeah, not us, sorry. And Granary is on Avalanche. Unfortunately, like for us, from our experience, like Avalanche was tough to like. It's like they weren't returning our calls. I'll be straight up. So we just thought there really wasn't much of a future for us right now, at least when there's so many other exciting opportunities. Like we need the incentives to align. So. Yeah, I am very excited. I'm regretful that Avalanche isn't participating in the Grain Dot sale. I think this would be such a cool way to align the narratives between the Grain Foundation, especially, and Glacier. But Reaper in the future, maybe with a V Glacier auto manager, auto vote manager. Like that's what the hope is, at least to break into the Avalanche market. And down the road, obviously, we'd be hoping to engage with the Avalanche community and assess the opportunities and see what makes sense to
And I'll be
prioritize.
honest, it was one of the protocols that I brought up to Ava Labs. Your all's protocols. So I told them, I said, these are great people. There's great protocols that want to come on AVAX. We just had to find a way to incentivize them. So it's like, I've just got to keep inching them, and hopefully as my relationship builds, I think there's more conversations to be had, and to trying to bring you guys over, because obviously more protocols on AVAX is more transactions, more volume, more users. So it helps us all if I can get you all over.
Awesome. Thanks for thinking of us. And yeah, we're very much looking forward to seeing what opportunities this brings. And very excited for all the oath holders to have something to do on Avalanche and to participate in an exciting new development over there. I don't think you can deny the success of each of these implementations on each network. Arbitrum might be a little bit flooded in that way, so you can see what competition looks like in that space. But the Solidly system, I think, is worth taking a look. So if you haven't tried before, I recommend diving into the documentation and learning as much as you can. If our conversation wasn't clear, you can also head to the Glacier Discord, which Austin, if you could share it
Sure.
in both AMA questions and in the actually you might get timed out. Charles, maybe you could dig it up if you have it, or otherwise I can go and post it. But
Yeah.
let's give everyone another chance to follow your journey. Thanks so much. Sorry for sort of